Greetings everyone, I'm Dimitri and welcome to today's episode of Fryderykraft. If you watched the previous episode, you know that we did some amazing work in the neighborhood of Pensworth, such as this building behind me, but more impressively, we built this side of the entire street of High Pensworth, the high street of the neighborhood of Pensworth, and we have these very magnificent, grand, opulent buildings lining the southern side of the street, which previously was just grass and fact, it was mostly just ocean. We had to fill in a lot of this, but it is a very nice looking street now. Now, even though our street looks very lovely during this nice sunny Ericton day, that is all about to change, as I have read in the Ericton newspaper that a dreadful storm is incoming, and the place will be covered in snow in sub-freezing temperatures, so I think it is time for us to go take some shelter. And how about this building right here?
Oh, hey, what's going on?
Oh, there's a homeless person in here doing his community service. Way to break the magic of Christmas. Anyways, let's head on into this area of the city over here. And turning into this alleyway right here, known as the Grind in the city, we have this very narrow, quaint street lined with old buildings, such as this large Tudor building right here, which is actually owned by me. Now, I have never shown the inside of this building before, but this shop is known as Guardians and Grimoires, which is a shop that sells Guardian-related items as well as enchanted books at a reasonable price. Historically, this shop has been used by the members of the server as a place to get enchanted books for their armor and equipment, but we also sell other items such as tridents, conduits, and totems of undying. On the upper floor over here, we have some enchanted books right here being sold pretty cheap, only a couple diamonds for a book. And this building has been built in 2022 and I have owned it since, and it is a very important building to me and as well as the other members of the city. So while we wait for the storm to subside, we will be waiting in here. And now the sun has set, and whilst the flurry rages outside, I will have a quick slumber, and perhaps the weather will be at ease once morning comes. And now that the weather has passed us, we may now go back downstairs and outside to be greeted with a nice snowy city, but instead of taking this long way down, I prefer to take this shortcut right here. Little bit painful, but it is much quicker. Wow, how peculiar. Such interesting weather patterns in this city, but now we are greeted with this nice snowy Ericton covered in a blanket. A cold blanket, but a white blanket, and a blanket nonetheless. And we can stroll through the streets on this snowy Ericton morning right past this abandoned building, which used to house one of the most popular department stores in the entirety of the city before it closed down earlier this year. Hopefully there can be a revival, as its merchandise was quite important in the construction of this city. Here we arrive at Brick Square, covered in snow, looking very magical. There is a very enchanted feeling of walking through the city as it just first snowed. You may not know this if you are new, but last year, unfortunately, the weather wasn't as it usually was, and there wasn't any snow last year, nor was there an Ericsmas celebration for some reason, but this year we will be having that, which is why what I would like to do now is, whilst the shop owners are clearing out the street of snow in front of their shops, I would like to get some decorations up for Ericsmas, which is our server's equivalent of Christmas. So I would like to have a nice Christmas market in this square, Pensworth Square, where we have traditionally had a nice tall Christmas tree, which is quite iconic for the server, as well as other decorations elsewhere, such as wreaths and lights and candles and whatnot, and other Christmas decoration splendor for the city to make it feel more alive and more magical. Now, this might be a little disappointing for the viewers, but I do build the exact same trees every year, and even worse, we're actually going to be cheating a little bit. So, what I have here is a schematic that has the trees that will go in these squares. This one is the Pensworth Square tree, looking very nice and tall and rather skinny, and going over to this and over here to Brick Square. If we place our tree down and change it over to its Brick Square variant, this is where the Brick Square tree will go. Now, the pack that I am using is called Holoprint, and it is a Bedrock schematic pack, which is much better than the previously used Structura, much more upgraded version with a lot more features, such as being able to have multiple schematics within one pack. But it is very useful, and I will be using this to guide me in my tree making, as I do have these uh, pre-made trees from last year. We also have to be a little bit careful because there's a whole bunch of armor stands inside of here, so if I were to just all the schematics come into view and it can get a little bit laggy. But anyways, I will get to building up these trees as I have these nice blueprints to guide me, and come back when the squares have come alive with the spirit of Christmas with the trees. And after a long day's work, it is now night, and we have the square glowing with the lights from the tree illuminating the city. Now, in front of the old city hall, this tree is the centerpiece of Brick Square this season, looking very majestic with its branches going out and have these colorful ornaments. Typically, we just have three colors of red, yellow, and blue. The blue usually being glass, and the red and yellow are these nice glazed terracottas, adding some nice details. And we also have some end rods coming down, and it looks very nice. Oh, and we have a frog light at the top as our star. Now, this tree looks very nice, and this one is a little bit more of a natural, rougher tree, with its branches more drooping and protruding out in each direction, which contrasts over here. Once we make our way to Pensworth Square, we are greeted with this trimmed up, tall, thin tree, which is much taller, yet has the same main decorations of the red, yellow, blue, as well as the end rods. And this tree is tall, almost as tall as the buildings surrounding it. But both trees are majestic in their own right. Personally, I prefer the Pensworth Square tree, but the city will not feel the same without either of them, so each year we build both of them. What a serene, peaceful night it is on the streets of Ericton, with the trees here all lit up without much mobs. Even though we just heard a zombie, but I really do love the city during this season, as a whole new level of life is added. And coming down this street, we do have some additional decorations that I have added. Right here, we have some pale oak and mangrove hanging signs intertwined to be making this alternating red, white pattern, as well as these bells hanging from this hanging between two buildings framing the street. And we just have this alternating a couple times over. making our way to the main square over here, which hasn't really been walked in too much as there is still a blanket of snow, but it still looks rather majestic, and eventually there will be a skyline behind here showing how this is the center of the city with a whole lot more buildings and density going on in that direction. But here we are greeted with the city hall. And looking up, we can see that finally our spires are beginning to oxidize, as is right there, as well as over here on this northeastern tower. Eventually, it will be all green in all of its splendor, as was intended. But it is nice to see it taking its time as we can enjoy the different phases of the City Hall throughout its history. And one final thing I would like to do in this episode is build a nice, grand, tall Christmas tree here in the City Hall Square, right in front of it. It is, I believe that the Pensworth Square tree is around 20 meters tall, and this one will be around 25, making it to around a little bit above this balcony right here, but it will be a lovely centerpiece for the city in this cold winter season. So I will get to building that up and come back once the main square is a little bit more festive. And in our central square, this magnificent tree takes its place as the centerpiece for the city during this season, and I think it turned out very nicely, complementing the city hall behind it. Now, one thing that may come as a surprise is this is the first time a tree has ever been built on Ericton Square, as in the past, this place used to be a bit of a mob farm, and it's a little bit near the edge of the town. You can even see that the city sort of stops right here. And before the main central area of the city where players would hang around would be at Pensworth Square over there. But since the advent of the street lighting throughout the city, well-lit areas became ubiquitous, and we now hang around in this square during nighttime as there are not as many mobs as there were before. But I think this tree turned out very nicely, and we have this red and gold tinsel uh, around the tree's circumference until it reaches the top, and I even added some purple ornaments. How fancy of me. And I think it turned out very nicely and fits in very well with the city hall, something that I wish to have for years now, having a tree at the city hall square, which is probably one of my favorite places in Ericton, since it is a little bit more built up now. And coming into... I did not expect that. Seems like the door was left wide open for a snow golem to get in. But coming into the city hall, let us take ourselves up the stairs and onto the grand balcony. And coming onto the balcony here, can end our episode where we are in front of this square with its tree, with the skyscraper in the background soon to be eclipsed by other high-rises that will be built, and we have gotten some amazing work done in the city. First, it has snowed, creating a nice enchanted winter environment in this area, and we have added some lovely decorations to make this harsh, cold climate a little bit more tolerable. And I thank you if you have made it this far in this episode. It does mean a lot to me, and be sure to leave a like if you have enjoyed this video, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't and would like to see more of this content. And I thank you for your viewership, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you, and farewell.